The Akashic Records have been recognized since the early 1900s. For some, you may have never heard of this term. For others, you may know what they are but have never accessed them or know how to do so. Edward Casey, a well-known medium from the 20th century, explains the Akashic Records as a universal computer system containing every word, every event, and every action that has happened or is to come. These very records connect us all on a soul level, and they're available to anyone who truly wishes to access them. These records are more than a universal filing cabinet. They hold the knowledge from the creation of our universe and will continue to exist well past our time on Earth. All the events from previous lifetimes and even events that will happen to us in this lifetime are available to us all. But where do these mystical records exist? The Akashic Records exist in a higher dimension or a different plane of existence, if you will. Here on Earth, we are in the third dimension because of the physicality of this world. Time on Earth is linear, whereas in higher dimensions, it is not. Same goes for the Akashic Records. This is why the records can hold information about the future, because the past, present, and all future exist on the same level. Our human brains can't process time in this manner, though, which is why we exist in the third dimension, while the records exist in a higher dimension. It's worth noting that even though the Akashic Records can predict future events, we still have free will on Earth that can determine how certain events play out. The records hold information for every possible outcome. This sounds a bit crazy, doesn't it? How can something hold the records for future events but not know exactly what will happen? This is because the Akashic Records hold the information for our universe and any other parallel universe that exists. So, for every outcome that can happen to us in this universe, there are an infinite number of other outcomes happening in the parallel universes. For example, you ride your bicycle down the street. Maybe you hit a rock, but you're fortunate enough to catch your balance, so nothing happens. In a parallel universe, though, you're not so lucky. You can hit a rock and fall off your bike and hurt yourself, or you can fly off your bike 20 feet. The possibilities are endless. This is why, even though the Akashic Records can foresee future events, our free will essentially alters the final outcome. This is not to say the records are unreliable or not true. They simply predict future events based on the trajectory we're headed in now. The future isn't all the Akashic Records can tell us, though. Like I mentioned earlier, they can tell us the past events and present. They hold the knowledge of events that have happened to us in past lives and could have shaped why we are here now. And they can even tell us what our purpose of incarnating this time around is. We each came here with a purpose and plan. Because of how our brains are set up, though, we forget this information. The Akashic Records can help us remember the divine purpose of why we're here. Now, you're probably asking, how do I access these records? There are multiple ways to access the Akashic Records, and it truly depends on what works best for you. Some teachers will take you through a specific prayer that is said to unlock something inside you and allows access to the Akashic Records. Linda HOWE, a well-known teacher of the records, has a prayer online called the Pathway Prayer. This prayer allows you to access the records and ask questions. It's worth noting that it may take a few times for this prayer to work if you decide to try on your own. You may have an easier time working with a teacher, but again, it truly is up to you how you can go about this. Keep in mind that receiving all the information that the records have to offer can be overwhelming if you're not experienced. This is why having a teacher or guide to help you along the way is essential, especially if you get anxious quickly. If you decide to try and access the Akashic Records on your own, here are a few tips. The first tip is to find a quiet place that you feel comfortable. This should be the area you meditate or an area that you won't be interrupted. Any interruptions or feelings of anxiety can make it difficult to access the records. Once you're settled in your meditative state, you can repeat the Pathway Prayer by Linda HOWE. You can either record yourself saying the prayer beforehand so it's easier to follow along, or find a guided prayer online that you can play while in meditation. When reading or listening to the Pathway Prayer, you may feel a tingling sensation where your third eye is, or even your crown chakra. The experience will be different for everyone, so do not try to force something to happen. Allow the information from the Akashic Records to flow to you, how it's supposed to. Any information can lead you to be frustrated, which will make it difficult to access the records. When you successfully tap into the Akashic Records, the information can come to you in multiple ways. You can either get visuals, hear voices, or have thoughts pop into your mind. This largely depends on your clairvoyant skills, meaning that if you usually see visuals when receiving spiritual insight, you will most likely see visuals when accessing the Akashic Records. Everyone will experience it differently, and no one way is better than the other. It's simply what works best for you. Once you know you're tapped into the records, it's time for the fun part, asking questions. Like most other ways to receive spiritual insight, the Akashic Records works best when you ask open-ended questions. This allows for the information to flow to you the way it's supposed to, without any preconceived notions about what you want to hear. It's important to stay open-minded because you genuinely don't know what answers you will get. So instead of asking, "Will I have a boyfriend this year?" a better question to ask would be, "What can I do to allow more connections and love to come into my life?" The first answer that comes to you is what you should listen to. Or for those who receive visual insight, you may be shown what you should do to allow more love into your life. If you think the answer you receive is unbelievable or sounds too good to be true, call on your guides or any ascended master to help clarify things for you. These records essentially hold the roadmap to your soul, so even though the answer to your question may seem unbelievable, it's very well possible that it's true. You just need more clarification. The Akashic Records are not supposed to be used as a fortune teller. They are here to give us insight that can help us evolve while we are in this third-dimensional place of being. You can ask questions such as how you specifically manifest things into being, or ask what lessons you are supposed to learn with your time on Earth. The Akashic Records are protected by record keepers. Often if you try and ask questions about somebody else, these gatekeepers can deny you access. This is because you are either not ready to hear this information or affects someone else's free will, which is not allowed. It's best to keep any questions you have about yourself until you are comfortable with the process of accessing these records. Hypnotherapists such as Dolores Cannon were allowed to access these records because they show they could be trusted on a spiritual level. Therefore, they have access to information such as the events that happened in Atlantis or events that are unfolding now. Accessing this type of information takes time, patience, and a clear understanding of how the Akashic Records work. When you're trying to channel the records for the first time, or about to, it's wise to have your questions written down before trying to access the records. Once you're in the state of receiving information, it can become overwhelming with all the new information you are picking up. Try to write down the answers you receive, or if it's not too distracting, you can record your session and say everything out loud. This will allow you to focus on the information coming to you and reflect on it later. Once your session is coming to a close, it's imperative to close the Akashic Records. You announce that you are ending the session and to close the records until your next session. The Akashic Records are a tool that anyone can access. They can provide deep insight into our lives and help us evolve while living on this earthly realm. I encourage you to channel your records. You might be surprised at what you learn about yourself.